I think the best word is very validating to get your diagnosis. Important that the diagnostic process itself focuses more on the person's experience rather than the person's experience just in the negative. Like say having ADHD and autism is like having two different sides of your brain that like fight each other.
Hello and welcome to This is Autism, the podcast from the North East Autism Society. My name is Kerrie Highcock and I'm the Family Development Manager at the charity. Today I am really pleased to be talking to Katie Toner, a young businesswoman who is autistic and has ADHD. Katie says that before a diagnosis she struggled with feeling anxious and weird. Afterwards she realised that she wasn't broken, just different, and began to learn what she needed to thrive. Now, Katie uses that knowledge to help neurodivergent children and young people celebrate who they are and communicate their needs. She's just set up a business called Dark Sky Sleepovers, creating themed events, and another one called the Unite Club, which delivers training in sensory regulation. We'll be talking about the diagnostic process and what it has meant to Katie. Thanks for joining us. Hi, Katie, are you okay?
Hello, Kerrie. Lovely to speak to you as always. I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Lovely to have you on the podcast. So Katie, can you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I can. So I am 29 and I live in Northumberland. Originally from Middlesbrough, but we're just not telling anyone. No, I'm kidding. But so I live with my family who are neurodivergent as well. As you've already said, I run my business Dark Sky Sleepovers and Unite Club as well, which gives me the opportunity to meet loads of different families around the North East. And it's just really exciting to get to be sort of a part of people's journey.
Brilliant. Thank you for that introduction. So at what point, Katie, did you realise that you may be autistic?
I think for me, it was less of a realisation of, I might be autistic, first of all. And it was just, I'm definitely a little bit different to my friends. And I think for me, it was when I started realising that I wasn't really always invited to my friends' houses, or when my friends asked the mums if I could go around, they kind of looked at them as if to say, not Katie, like, oh, she's a bit much, and I didn't really think I was that much compared to my friends, but obviously I was, and so, then my brother actually, who's 11 years younger than me, he was diagnosed as autistic when he was about 10 years old. And I was still really struggling with my mental health at the time and had kind of gone through lots of different things, but I know we'll get to that a bit later on. And once he was diagnosed, I was kind of like, maybe that's thing that was making me struggle as well, given that we've exhausted all the other options. And then once we looked at it, it really was very clear, and we were like, how did people miss it,
And what kind of did that realisation feel like for you, Kate? Firstly, that I'm different to other people and kind of getting that validation. What was it like for you?
I think, you touched on it really well at the start when you said, I felt a bit weird and then I found out that I wasn't really broken. And that kind of goes back to a bit of an analogy I like to use called the walkie-talkie effect. And I always say to people, it was kind of like I was wandering around and seeing everybody else use the walkie-talkie and pressing the button and kind of hearing, yes, roger that, over and out. And it worked so well for them all. And when I pressed the button on mine, I just heard like static noise. Every so often I might get through, but it wasn't very clear and people didn't really get me. And I'd go and I'd say to people, it's not working. And they'd say, just turn it up. And I'd try that and I still didn't hear very clear. And I said to them again, it's still not working. And they said, change the batteries. And that didn't work. And then I said, it's still broken. And they said, well, clearly you just don't know how to use a walkie-talkie, Katie, because everybody else in the classroom's using a walkie-talkie perfectly fine. Everybody else at work's using a walkie-talkie perfectly fine. And then I got my diagnosis and it was like somebody said to me, oh yeah, it's fine. You just need to use channel 2 instead of channel 3. And then you find people that communicate on your wavelength, and it was like I had a whole host of people going, oh, finally, we've been screaming into this, waiting for you to come along. And it was all, the other diagnosed people and allies of the community. So for me, that's the sort of best way I can describe that sort of loneliness and almost working on a different frequency to other people a little bit.
That is, honestly, that's such a good analogy. So what was the diagnostic process like for you then, Katie? Were there any barriers or challenges?
Yeah, well, actually, for me, it's really interesting because I was diagnosed in 2020 during COVID. So I was already on a wait list, and then the world shut down, and I was getting emails, putting off appointments and putting off appointments. And at that point, we kind of felt like, gosh, if I don't get this diagnosis, we don't have another option of like, for want of a better word, in inverted commas, what's wrong with me? I was really struggling, and we tried everything else. And it got to a point where we kind of rang up the diagnosis people and were like, I don't care what you guys have to do, but I've been on a wait list for long enough now, and you said I would be seen, so like figure it out and help me be seen, because nobody else wants to help me, and like me mental health's very bad. And then all of a sudden I was seen. And again, because it was COVID, I wasn't seen in person, it was over the phone. Yeah, I don't even think it was on Zoom, I think it was over the phone. And I remember worrying so much beforehand about thinking, well, if they can't see me, how are they going to know? They might not see me pacing around, and all the things you worry about. And then I got off the phone, and I sort of thought, oh, there's no way she's going to believe me. That's what I thought. I thought, she said she's going to ring me back today, that like like obviously that means that she doesn't think I am, because she must need longer to decide. But it turns out she very much thought I was, and that's why she only needed to ring me back within a few hours, because I'd apparently proved my point. And like I say, because my brother was already autistic, and bless him, once he got his diagnosis, he kind of moved to a new school, and he stood in front of the kids and he said, just want you all to know that I'm autistic, and that means my brain works a bit different. So if I say things that are a bit strange, don't bully me, because it's just me. And it sort of like that made me feel like fine with it. And I think I'd have been okay with it, but it was just really sweet kind of how we went about it. And so for me, it was, I think the best word is very validating to get your diagnosis. Obviously, there was barriers with times and things like that. And I'm lucky that I was, believed first time, as it were, because I know a lot of people, really struggle to get a diagnosis and sometimes have to go back and forward a few times. So I'm glad I got it. But as I say to lots of people, you're sometimes given your diagnosis and then just told, right, off you go. Or there's a list of links to things you might find useful, or a few pamphlets that might be good to you or might not, but you have a look through and see what you think would work. And you kind of sat there thinking, and if I knew what worked, I would have just skipped this process and done the thing that worked. I don't, so I need your help. So that's kind of why I actually started Unite Club, is to be that stopgap for adults and kids who are kind of either thinking about the diagnosis, have just had it, or have got it and then don't know where else to turn, really. So it's all based on my experience.
So, Katie, what do you think would have been really helpful for you after that? What post-diagnostic support would have been useful, do you think?
I think it's really important that when you go through the diagnosis process, and I think this is where it maybe differs a little bit to the ADHD process. Maybe it's because I was diagnosed with ADHD privately, but in the ADHD diagnosis, I was almost given some strategies of what might help. I don't necessarily feel like after my autism diagnosis I was given those strategies. I was sort of given a sheet of paper that says these are the things Katie struggles with. And it wasn't an exhaustive list, it was quite small, the report. I think it's 2 sides of an A4 piece of paper. Which I'm definitely not, and you've spoken to me before, Kerrie.
No, you're not at all. I don't know how they summarised it all in 2 sides of A4.
And me neither, but they did a good job. But yeah, I think it would be better if they, gave a lot more understanding around like sensory needs and things like that, because for me that's a big challenge. And I went and then paid for an OT diagnosis. And when I got my OT diagnosis, it was like she'd told me I was a whole different person to who I thought I was. And I was like, oh, I'm not surprised I'm struggling so much. And I think it would have been beneficial if I had that support after my autism diagnosis, particularly because a lot of people that have got a diagnosis as an adult often have experienced other diagnoses previously. So for me, it was like, well, you're anxious and you've got generalized anxiety, and then you've got anxiety about this, and then it was you've got depression, and then it was, well, you might have bipolar, but you might not. They all freak out because I say to them, "Oh, before you got your diagnosis, were you diagnosed with these things?" And they go, "Oh, that's really weird." And I'm like, "Yeah, because we all have the same story." Um, so for me, it would be important for them to help people understand it. And as well, I think it's important that the diagnostic process itself focuses more on the person's experience rather than the person's experience just in the negative. Especially parents going in with kids as well, because you're going in as the parent and you're saying, essentially, these are all the things my child struggles with or is bad at. They're not great at communication or emotional regulation or getting themselves, whatever it is. And you leave that appointment either with a diagnosis but not much support and lots of negative things in your mind about your child potentially, or you leave without a diagnosis but you've still got all those negative things and no support. You'd never go into a diagnosis and hear a parent say, my child's hyperlexic and, was reading Harry Potter at 3 years old, or my child's a real social butterfly and they're so empathetic and great with people's emotions. But that means that they struggle with managing their own, or, my child's part of the football team and they're only 6 and it's the under 10s or whatever it is. You never hear them celebrate the good things. And you'll know yourself working with families, all these children have such amazing qualities that they have alongside the things they struggle with. And I think families were able to share and acknowledge those things, it would make the difficult days, which we all have, a little bit easier to manage because you know that you've got those positives as well.
Absolutely, Katie. We're going to take a little break now, and then we're going to come back after our break and talk a little bit more to Katie around masking and what she does day to day as well. Hi, while we're on a quick break, I thought I'd tell you a little bit more about the Family Development Service here at the North East Autism Society. The Family Development Services provides support for families pre, during and after diagnosis and includes a variety of services including our parent and toddler groups, autism hubs, workshops for families, a dedicated enquiry line and our resource site as well, which can be found at the family resource site on the North East Autism Society website. So if you go to neas.org.uk and go along to the family development site, you can find all the information there. Hi, welcome back to This is Autism. Today we're discussing the autism diagnostic process with the lovely Katie. So Katie, we've spoke quite a bit there about the diagnostic process, and I think one of the things that comes up time and time again, particularly for later diagnosed people, is, masking. So how would you describe masking? Is it something you do? What's your experience of it?
Yes, I think I'm definitely a masker. And I think that's probably part of the reason why I was diagnosed later in life. During school, I was the typical sort of gifted and talented child that was, and I don't say that meaning I thought that, it's what they called you in school if you were, an overachiever, basically, a perfectionist that wanted to do everything right, which was wonderful for me, riddled with anxiety. No, not really. And I also did a lot of musical theatre and performing growing up, actually, which I think sort of almost helped with the masking in one way, but didn't in another, because people just saw, oh, there's Katie, she's trying, she's being the centre of attention, and I sort of blurred the lines, and you almost become like a character. And it's not even something that you necessarily do on purpose. But I mean, I specifically remember the older years of high school being really tricky for me because I didn't really feel in my brain like I was the age of everyone else. It was very strange. I wasn't really like interested in the things that they were interested in. I didn't necessarily want to go on dates with boys, but I kind of did because people said I should, or like go out drinking, but I did because people said I should. So then your mask kind of almost becomes like, oh, well, I'm going to cosplay as a teenager today kind of thing, or you get to work and you're like, okay, I'm going to cosplay as an employee today, and you sort of have to switch on a different mask. I mean, my anxiety at one point when I was at work when I was 18 years old was so bad that instead of just calling in sick and saying I've hurt my leg, I can't come in, I threw myself down the stairs to hurt my leg so that when I got to work the next time I was in, I actually had a limp so that I wasn't faking it and I wasn't lying and I was actually ill. That's like how deep the mask was going. It was like, it's laughable to me now, but like it is a madness to do that, like to be walloping your joint off things so that you've got a bruise, so that when people say, oh, like, did you really hurt yourself? You're like, yeah, there's the bruise. So yeah, and then for me, what happened was I moved to Australia when I was 19 because I was very depressed and I was due to go to university, and I thought, well, I might as well be depressed in the sunshine. Exactly. And I kind of thought, well, no one really knows me here. So it doesn't really matter if I'm the, blunt, sarcastic person that I am, that, people kind of say, oh, well, Katie, like, just like, don't have much tact, do you? Or like, watch what you say, or like, maybe don't say it like that, or whatever it might be. And so I was just me, and I sort of unmasked for a while. And then when I came back to England, actually my mum said to me, oh, you're not the Katie that you were before you left. Like, you used to be like really happy and like bouncing about, and now, like sometimes you're like quite dark and things. And I said, I know, but I never really felt like that. I just don't pretend now. So it might be more uncomfortable for people around me because I'm not pretending that I'm okay. And I think for a lot of us, that's where the mask comes from, is letting people think that you're okay because you might have tried to show them that you're not in the past. And, not by anyone's fault. They just might not have picked up on it, or they might have said, you're fine, don't worry. Or, it's the typical people say to you, oh, how are you doing? You all right, Kerrie? And if you say anything more than, oh yeah, I'm all right, then if you say all the things that have gone brilliant in your life, you're showing off. And if you say all the things that suck in your life, then you're depressing. And, oh, well, I don't really need to hear about all that at tea time, Kerrie. We're trying to have a nice meal with the family. Like, why are you depressing everyone? Or like, why are you showing off? Like, Uncle Stephen's just lost his job and you're talking about your promotion. It's you can never win. So you just start saying, well, I'm fine. And then you sort of just convince yourself, and then you end up really not being fine often, I think is the case, really. So for me, I'm coming to a point now where I'm starting to unmask. And for anybody who is sort of starting that process, I just say, like, start with the people that you trust the most. Because it is exhausting shedding that mask because you're being the real you. And it's equally exhausting carrying it around all the time, so find that balance, and with people that you trust. That way it's less anxiety inducing to sort of be yourself.
Yeah. How important was it, Katie, the diagnosis in terms of unmasking?
For me, it was incredibly important. I mean, as I said earlier on, I am a perfectionist, and I hold myself to the highest standards that anyone else could hold me to. And I really struggled with things like executive dysfunction, where I'm sat and I'm thinking, I need a shower, I need a shower, I need a shower, I need a shower. And I'm sat for 3 hours thinking, I need a shower, I need a shower. And I'm not saying I'll just have one tomorrow, which is what a lazy person would do, or I'll have one next week because they're not that bothered. I just sit all day thinking I need a shower, or all day thinking I need to write this invoice, or I need to do my homework when I was at school and it doesn't get done. And it's frustrating because it's like you're given a game and you're trying to play it on hard, but your controller doesn't work properly, or you haven't been given the instructions, and you're trying to play it at such a higher level to what your capacity is. And I'd gone through all the possible options to help myself that I could do. I'd done talking therapy, and I'd tried to find a hobby, and I'd tried taking antidepressants and of all the different kinds. And I was basically rattling at one point. I was taking that many tablets to try and sort my mental health out. And for me, when I finally got my diagnosis, it was like, oh, right, okay, so, like, when other people are in on the joke and I'm not, that's why. It's not because 'cause I'm stupid and I just don't understand. It's literally because, like, sometimes you're one step ahead of other people. Like, I remember in school, my friends would get angry with me when we would make dances up in primary school because they'd say to me, "You already know that dance, you've made it up before." And I was like, "I haven't, I'm just listening to the words of the music right now." And I realise now that it was just my pattern spotting. You know, I would ruin movies because 'cause I'd be like, "That person's gonna do that now, it's obvious," and then it would happen, and everyone would be like, "Why are you ruining it? You've seen it before." And I was like, "Well, I haven't, but it's obvious, like, the music and this and this and this," and, you know, for me, it was like, "Oh, okay, like, I'm not just a horrible person. I'm not," you know, for me, you get lots of labels when you don't have your diagnosis. You know, I was bossy, overconfident, bolshy, didn't have any tact. I was sarcastic, but not necessarily in the nice way. I had a lot of attitude. I was banned from watching Tracy Beaker because I had so much attitude as a child. You know, all these things, unreliable once I got to work. I'm the least unreliable person you'll ever meet. I'll roll up, you know, and then go to hospital the next day. Like, it's that's not me at all. So for me, I would much rather be labelled autistic than all those other negative things, because autistic is neither a negative nor a positive. It just is. It's just me, and all the things that come with it. You know.
And I know you're autistic, Katie, and also have ADHD. What is that like? What's kind of the interplay between the two differences for you?
Um, it's a wonderful experience. Almost like having a married couple in your head. Sometimes they get on really well, and other times they argue incessantly and want to do the antithesis of each other at all given opportunities. So my brain loves structure and routine, but absolutely despises it at the same time and just wants to, like, go on holiday tomorrow because that's fun. You know, so it's really difficult to try and plan anything really that will last a long time. And I always say that, you know, ADHDs especially, we don't necessarily build in habits, we build in routines. So for me, it's really important that I build in routines. So rather than saying, right, I need to do this specific piece of work at this specific time on this specific day, I have different days of the week for different jobs. So Mondays usually social media or business. So there we go. This ticks off both of those. Well done, job done. I'll go on holiday for the rest of the day. But as I say, it just means that, and my schedule even actually says on it, this planner is a prompt. Use it to create consistency, so that my PDA didn't look at it and go, "Well, I'm not doing that because you've told me to." So even my planner allows that flexibility for me to go, "Fine, well, I'm doing social media, but I'm doing this because that's the thing I want to do, not the thing I need to do." And yeah, it really is a battle. It's really exhausting, especially at the moment when there's an ADHD shortage. And I know I just mentioned to you that I've recently had a physical pain flare up after 2 years. And the only real thing that's changed in the last year is the fact that the last 4 or 5 months is the fact that I've had no ADHD medication. And now that's caused me to be in hospital in physical pain for 5 days. So that's the sort of impact that overwhelm can have. Like I say, having ADHD and autism is like having two different sides of your brain that like fight each other quite a lot, and it really wears you out, especially when you add Ehlers-Danlos loss and the chronic fatigue that comes with that as well. So it's all about creating structure and routines that help both parts of your brain sort of thrive. And actually, what I found is once I got my autism diagnosis, my ADHD was the thing that almost impacted me more. And when I got my autism diagnosis, I said to them, "I think I've got ADHD, you know." And they said to me, "Oh, well, we're the team that do ADHD diagnosis as well, Katie. And if you did have it, you know, we're not sure you'd really be like medicated. So I don't think it's really worth like getting it really for you." So I went through the right to choose process. And once I got my diagnosis, I'm now actually on two different types of medication for my ADHD. And it took me 3 years between my autism and my ADHD diagnosis to get them. And in that time, I probably spent a total of about 20 to 30 weeks in hospital in agony. And that's purely from physical burnout. And once I started on my ADHD meds, pretty much all of those symptoms went. So sometimes it's really frustrating because sometimes you wish people would just listen to you. And often I'll go to mental health appointments and things where I'm talking about my ADHD and my autism, and professionals will say to me, "Oh, do you know, you've got such a good understanding of yourself. Like, it's so brilliant the way you word it, and it's brilliant that you've got so many strategies and coping techniques." And I have to say to them, "Yeah, but the only reason I'm an expert is because none of you who are paid to be the experts would believe me or do their job. So I've got all this knowledge and all the information, and I do all this work, and I don't get paid a dime for it. And then I come here, and then you don't believe me." So it's really difficult. Like I say, but it's just about trying to come up with routines.
Yeah, absolutely. To be honest, Katie, there's a lot of. I'm making some notes because I think we'll have you on again on a different podcast about some of the stuff you've just spoke about. We could do lots of different podcasts with you. So my last question is just tell us a little bit about what are you doing now? I know you're doing a lot of public speaking. You've got your own businesses. You're doing some wonderful stuff. Just tell us more about that.
Yeah, so it all really started just after my diagnosis. I started my Dark Sky Sleepovers business, meeting lots of families, and the message from many of them was the same, in that it feels like we're the only one. It feels like there's no one like us and we've got no support. And I very quickly wanted to do something about that wasn't just once a year, which is lovely, celebrating your birthday, but people need help all the time. And so I started Unite Club, and it's the opposite of Fight Club. The first rule of Unite Club is you've got to talk about it to everybody. That's the rule. And really, it's just a place, our tagline is grow, connect and unite. And really, that's what we want to help families in the Northeast do, grow through knowledge and youth clubs and places where families can spend time together just being. They don't need to be happy or be sad or be sensible or like all the other families. They just need to be. Full stop. That's fine with me. And whatever that encompasses, we're good to go. Connection again, giving them a place where they can meet other people like them, because we all feel like we're the only fish in the sea until we swim around a little bit further and see other people. And it's really nice to be able to give people those connections. And you'll know yourself, once you find somebody, you find your tribe, you're like, oh phew, and you can really give them that deep breath. I always say, the first thing that people can do when they come to meet me or Unite Club is just take that deep breath that we all need to take when we're sort of going through this wonderful, spicy brained journey. And Unite, at the end of the day, give people the tools, the knowledge to be able to go and say to, the uncle that doesn't understand why your child needs an iPad and everybody else doesn't, or the teacher at school that says, well, you don't need fidgets because, as one person has heard from a school, autistic kids are just like everybody else, and they need to learn to concentrate like other people because they're not always going to get different things. And it's like, not if you've got that attitude, they're not. Or everybody else, we can't give you a fidget because everybody else is going to want one. No, they aren't. I went to school with a boy who had diabetes, and he had a Mars bar in class, and I didn't try and nick his Mars bar or moan that he got a Mars bar and I didn't. I was just like, oh, well, it's good that he's not going to have a seizure now, so enjoy your Mars bar. Like, that's not how kids work. It's how adults work. So don't sort of project that. So that's what Unite Club's about, really. And I do one-to-ones with families, and I say, like, money's not a barrier. Inclusion, includes money and location and all of that. So I'm actually working with a lovely charity at the minute called Kayaks, and we're running a youth club together. In South Shield. So yeah, as I say, it's just for me about giving back. I experienced a lot through my diagnosis process, and there's so much that I would love for other people not to have to go through. And that's where it all comes from, really.
Wonderful, Katie. Katie, if people want to find out about your work and about the youth club and Unite Club, where do they go to? Where can they find you?
Yes, you can head to uniteclub.co.uk, and you can fill in our submission form online, find out a little bit about me, or you can also head to Facebook and search for the Unite Club Family Connection section. We've got a free Facebook group of 700 families just like yours, who are there and happy to connect. And then you should be able to go on BBC Sounds and search for a chat that I did recently with Anna Foster as well during Autism Month. So if you're not sick of my voice already, you can go and have a little listen to that as well.
Wonderful. Well, to be honest, I could chat to you all day, Katie. I think it's brilliant. We're definitely going to have you back. So thanks so much for coming on, and thank you to everyone who's listening. If you've got any questions or comments about anything you've heard, please get in touch with us at info@ne-as.org.uk. You can also follow North East Autism Society on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram or LinkedIn. The podcast This is Autism comes out every month, and you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google or Spotify so you never miss an episode. Bye for now.